Hi everyone, it's Eliana with another card share using the Simon Says Stamp November Card Kit. I'm going to start by making my front panel using the Lawn Cuts large stitched rectangle stackables, and I'll just run that through my Big Shot. After that, I just take my T ruler and I just draw a line about 1 inch from the bottom. I'm going to be doing some partial die cutting, so I'm just setting my second to the largest circle from the small nestabilities from Spellbinders. I'm lining up the line that's drawn on the bottom of the card and lining it up with the edge of my cutting plates, and that will prevent the whole die from cutting across. Once it's cut, I take an eraser and I erase the pencil lines so I don't forget. I take that same T-square and I just cut off the remainder of that circle, and I want a flat end so that it looks like a snow globe. I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to draw a line around the edge of the circle so that I know what I can trim off. And I'm just taking the bottom part of the pattern paper off because I will be using that on the front panel, and then I cut the rest of the design with my scissors. After I'm done cutting it out, I just take the eraser and I erase the circle again so that the pencil line doesn't show through my shaker card. Once I'm done erasing that, I take a 1/2 inch strip of the red pattern paper that came in the kit, and I'm going to stamp the stripe border stamp that comes in the kit. And what I'm going to do is just to create the pedestal to the snow globe. And I take a piece of scrap paper and I fold it in half so that I could funnel my embossing powder back in, and I'm just using the Recollections gold embossing powder that you find at Michael's. And once I'm done with that, I will melt the powder with my heat gun. Earlier I had tried to do the pedestal with the Hot Lips ink from Simon Says Stamp, and I just didn't like the way it looked, so I thought I would try it with the gold. I took that piece that I had tried earlier and I just used that as the template to cut my gold embossed piece, and I just cut the edges at an angle just to create the pedestal. Once that is done, I set it aside so that I could adhere the rest of my card, and I'm just taking a strip of the brown polka dot that came in the kit and I just cut a small sliver, and now I'm adhering the bottom of the blue pattern paper where the bunnies were, adhere that so that 2 rows of the polka dots are showing. And then I just run a small strip of adhesive on the bottom of my card and then another strip on the pattern paper, and then I just line it across the entire length of the bottom of the card. I trim off the pieces that overhang and I adhere the pedestal to the bottom, and I take that off later on, but at the time it seemed like I needed just to put it on there just to see where I was at. Now I'm ready to put my sentiment on the front of the card, and I'm just placing my card on the bottom left hand corner of Misty, and I'm putting my sentiment where I want it to be. Before inking up my stamp, I want to make sure that there is nothing fuzzy on my stamp, and so I'm just cleaning it off with my Close to My Heart stamp scrubber. And now I am inking up my stamp with the Simon Says Stamp Hot Lips. I want to test my stamp to make sure that there's nothing on it because there was some extra fuzz on there, and so I just stamp it onto the grid paper of Misty. And now I'm re-inking my stamp to stamp the front of my card. Once I get my sentiment on there, I want to do something to the background of my card front because it's just looking a little plain. And so what I decide to do is to use the swirling stars stamp that comes in the kit, and I just plan to use that with the glitter embossing powder just for a tone-on-tone look. So I'm just lining up the stamp onto the front of Misty, and I need to move my card front just a 1/4 inch over to the right because I want the stamp to hang off the edge of the card. And so I'm just going to use the 1/4 inch grid lines on my stamping paper as a guide. And so I went ahead and prepped my surface with my embossing buddy, and now I'm going to ink up my stamp with the Versamark. Because I'm stamping on a white surface, it's very hard to see where my image is, and so what I do is I just do a little tick line on the edge of my grid paper just to give me an idea of where my stamped image starts. And I go ahead and cover my card front with the embossing powder, and I need to know where the top of the stamp is too. So I draw another line, so that tells me that's the area that the stamp is going to land. So I just move my cardstock up enough so that I know that the powdered part of my card is above the top tick line, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense to you. And so now I'm embossing, putting the embossing powder on again, and now I'm moving my card up again. And the powder really helps to see where your stamped image is. And I'm just putting a piece of Post-it tape over the sentiment because I don't want any of the embossing powder to go over my sentiment. I suppose it doesn't really matter because I use clear embossing powder anyways, but at the time it just seemed like a good idea. And so I go ahead and heat set my embossing powder because I don't want to mess it up with the when I flip the card over to do the other side. I need to put the magnet down, and so that way I'm not messing up the powder that's down, so I am heat setting that. Once the powder is set, I go ahead and stamp on the other side of the card, and I'm just using the same technique. I'm just setting it down, and I go ahead and remove the pedestal because I don't want to stamp on top of it, and I'm just using the grid lines to line up my stamp again. And I'm not sure what brand of this embossing powder it is. I've had it for a long time, and it's just a sparkle clear powder, and I thought it would be nice to just do a little bit of a tone-on-tone look on the front of my card, just for a little bit of added interest. I thought that if I used a pattern paper it would be a little too busy, and so I went ahead and used white. I did try a craft cardstock and I didn't like the way that looked, but I thought that the traditional white would look nice. Once that is complete, I go ahead and put my embossing powder on the other side of the card, and I go ahead and heat set that as well. And now that my card front is complete, I'm going to set Misty aside to adhere the acetate to the front of the card. And I'm just using some transparency that I got at the office supply store, and I just have a few random pieces that I store in the front of the box, just partial pieces. That's also where I put any packaging, is there. And so I'm just going to trim down a small piece to adhere to the front of my, or behind my front panel. I just took a little pencil to mark where I needed to cut, and now I'm just cutting it in my Fiskars guillotine trimmer. I'm just applying some ATG around the very edges of the snow globe so that I could adhere my acetate to the front of that, or transparency I should say. Once that's done, I need to adhere my pedestal back in place, but I can't tell where it is, and so I just need to get my panel in front of something that's not white so that I could adhere it straight. And now I need to add my foam adhesive to the back of my card. And so this foam adhesive, it's part of a really large roll. I just took enough off of the big roll just so that it's workable. And it's very thin, and I end up doing 2 layers of the foam so that the sequence can shake around inside the card. With a shaker card, you want to make sure that all of your adhesive, your foam adhesive, touches so that none of the sequins or glitter falls out of the card. Now this foam adhesive is very sticky. I ended up taking my shaker card apart because the snowflake glitter, the snowflake sequence that came in the kit, the snowflakes were a little large, and so they didn't look good with the little bunny and the little tree in the background, and so I ended up taking it apart to to take those out, and it was a big mess. And so if you're making this card, do not add the snowflake sequence into it. They're just too big for the character and the trees that are in the pattern paper. So now I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get my pattern paper in the right position so that I don't have to worry about positioning when I put my shaker card together. And so basically just look through the window and I line up my paper, and then I just add adhesive without lifting my pattern paper. And so I am adding the sentiment to the inside of my card, and I'm just using the one of the sentiments from the Paper Tray Ink stamp set, and it's called the Tree Trimming Trio. And I picked a sentiment that was going to complement the front of the card, and it's Celebrate the Magic of Christmas. And I just thought that the little characters in the snow globe was more magical, and so I just felt that that was better than the sentiments that came in the kit. And I'm just stamping it with the hot lips. And that way the sentiment is inside the card, and I don't have to worry about stamping it with the shaker portion of my card adhered to the front of it. And now I'm taking the adhesive off my foam, and I take all of it off except for that one piece that's there. That way I can just adhere that one corner before adhering the entire card front to the panel. Now I'm adding some 3mm moonshine cupped sequins to the mix, along with some diamond dust glitter. And I got this glitter at a garage sale, and so it's just a very chunky glitter. And I'm adding my card to the front panel, and this is where I'm pulling off that last piece of adhesive, and this is where I figure out that those large snowflakes are just too big for this shaker card, and you can't really see the bunny. And so after this I just take it apart, and now I've removed the snowflakes out, and then that's much better. And now my card is complete. Be sure to give my video a thumbs up and check out my blog at mysweetpetunia.com. Have a great day.